founder. He just walked past me. So I'd like to introduce Father Placid, and he will have a brief history on our on this place and introduce a few people. So with that, Father Placid.
Thanks very much, Bill. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. You can hear me. Okay. I'm glad, because I hate to talk to myself. And I'm so great that Deacon Bill was able to capture the moment that we are here and what we're trying to do. Just a few acknowledgments, and then I'll tell you how this all began if you don't know. There's a tribute. In the book you have a founder's circle. It's very arbitrary. It's my personal opinion, so you don't have to agree with what's on the sheet. But in the beginning, we had an opportunity to ask. I had to ask our leadership in our Franciscan community when I was in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, after coming back from New York, and I was involved with the chaplaincy work, and Sisters from Manitowoc are here right now to say that they were part of it too. But how it all began, I'll simply say, Father John Pajunas, who was our provincial at the time, now we got new leadership and you'll hear from him in a few minutes, is that he asked me, he came to Manitowoc and said, well, how do you like it here in Manitowoc with the sisters of the Franciscan Sisters of Christian Charity? And I simply said, very honestly, I like it, but there's not enough to do. And so he just, as a very intelligent provincial that was in formation when I was directing that in 1970s and 80s, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I just simply said, without thinking, open up a storefront in Stevens Point. And he simply said, go ahead. That's how it works, doesn't it, John? You'll know John, but John is our counselor for this area with the new province that we have, and you'll talk a little bit. No, it wasn't quite that simple, because then he said, well, what about the city? Would the city want you to open up a storefront? And so I said, well, I'm not so sure. I haven't talked to them. But Randy Stroik, would you please stand up, Randy, for a second? Randy was on the council, and he approached the city, and from there it was, city is fine with us coming here. And then Father John said he talked to Bishop Callahan in La Crosse. Bishop Callahan said, well, talk to Father Tom Linder. He's the dean here in this area. And Father Finney and I went to talk to him, and he says, well, yes, you're not opening up a church, but you're doing something that will meet with people. And so he said, you know, the church is fine with coming in here. And so that's how it kind of unfolded. And so that's what I consider to be the founding group, together with my brother Bob and his wife Marlene. Marlene, could you stand up for a second, even though you don't want to? But she, together with her husband, the dad of Randy and my brother, they were quite instrumental in getting these things going over here. And then there was a person by the name of Leo Jacoby, married to Janet Jacoby. And he stood downstairs with about 20 people, and he said, well, let's take 3 years to figure out what we're going to do with this space. Is that how long it took? Leo, am I exaggerating a little bit? No, he was good at gathering people together and getting people to explore things. And what he simply said was, let's kind of brainstorm. And so the next thing I knew is that he said, we're going over to supply at the university, and we're getting tables, we're getting chairs, and then we'll open the doors on June 1st, and we'll see what happens after that. So that's in one way in which we can understand, you know, how things come together. It's not just one person doing something. And then as the things unfolded, there were groups of people. My sister Teresa and her family were very supportive. Her daughter-in-law made the cake that we'll enjoy in a few whiles. It was as I mentioned, the Franciscan Sisters of Christian Charity. who have very competent communications department, and they did a lot of the posters, and Sister Julianne from the beginning was already working in Stevens Point at the parish, at the university, with the busy students retreat. She had been here about 30 years, Sister Julianne, or maybe 10. Anyway, so she was very helpful in connecting with some of the nuances, and together with other sisters in Manitowoc. And then the group of sisters, Sister Rita was here from Sisters of St. Joseph, Third Order of St. Francis, that really helped to start Stevens Point back 110 years ago. Her picture, one of her pictures is on the wall here. So they were very supportive and very instrumental. And then there was the Crane family. Sally Crane is here. That was very helpful. Together with Father Finian, who's in Pulaski right now. The Felician sisters from Polonia came in very frequently to help us with talking with people, having conversations. And then there was Pauline Fisher, who also helped to get a lot of the furniture that we have in this building, especially on the lower level. Not too long ago, with the help of Deacon Bill and his wife, Mary Jill, we have an advisory board, and the names are listed there: Greg Hansel, Mark Christensen, Mary Jo, Brian Farmella. I think Greg is still here, aren't you, Greg? Yeah, so Greg has been very helpful in building up some of our relationships with the people here in the city and the board of Stevens Point. There's just probably just one final thing that I'd like to say in regards to how things unfold. When I said to Father John Pajunas, I want to open up a storefront, I was not just ad-libbing. You know what ad-libbing means? That's what talk show hosts do. They don't know what to say, so they just say whatever comes to their mind. Well, I did literally say, open up a storefront. But I had had some experience in previous years working in high school work, working in New York at Covenant House. And when you say, where do inspirations come from? I remember as if it was, today was back in April, that after we collected some information, I put together a booklet, went down to talk to Father John Pajunas, who was the provincial, together with Jim Gannon, who was on the council, and 4 or 5 others, and I presented the material that we had collected, and all of a sudden he said to the council members, well, should we approve this idea of opening up a storefront? And all in the council said yes. And I said, where's the money? And Father John said, don't worry about the money. You can raise some, but whatever there is will come. Okay. But the key point is, I'd been studying at Marquette some years ago when I was principal. And I finished the meeting in Franklin, Wisconsin, and I was on my way back to Manitowoc, but I couldn't resist going into Marquette bookstore, which is right down in Marquette. And as I was browsing the shelves, hoping not to buy anything, I came across this book on communication. And it says here very clearly, Harvard Business recommends this as a must-read if you want to be able to communicate with other people. So, in May, on May 17th, 2014, before we opened up here June 1st, but we had all the approvals from the city and et cetera, I sat down at McDonald's at 10:10 in the morning on May 17th, 2014. That was 2 weeks before we opened. And as I normally do, when something strikes me from a book, I don't underline it. My brother Ray did that, and I could never read what he underlined because he scribbled so much on it. I just took the slip from the cup of coffee and the one sausage muffin, and turned over. And when I came to page 80, I'll just read part of it. It simply says on page 80, this is on the topic of persuasion. It simply says, effective persuaders must be adept at describing their positions in terms that illuminate to the people they are working with or trying to persuade. It's easy, they said, for a child to persuade the child to go to a store to shop because the parents say, we're going to the store and shop, and there are lollipops at the end of the store line. And so the kid jumps and doesn't know what it's about. And then it says, in work situations, persuasive framing is obviously more complex. Would Leo please say yes or no? It says that in the book. And then it says, the underlying principle is the same. It's the process of identifying shared benefits. And that's what we've been doing. Whoever's been working here as a volunteer, this place is here today and you're here because somehow we stumbled on there's a benefit for everybody here. And that's the gift of how we are here today. I'll have one more comment towards the end of the program, but I want Bill to take over.
Thank you, Father Placid. I'm going to ask Richard to come on up now, wherever Richard is. There he is. So one of the benefits that we have here is we get to hear about people's lives. We learn about their lives, and we learn about where they're going, what they're doing, and we all are all in memory of those people. We all remember the people that we meet here. We do our best with knowing names and so forth. But we also have people here that are no longer with us. And I think it's now, we can take a time now in remembering their lives here and how we can honor their memory with this prayer that we're going to do, this memorial. So keep in mind our own lives and how temporary we are here. And as we read the names of the people that have visited our place, served our place, or are part of our place here at Franciscans Downtown.
October 3rd, 2015, Richard Stroik. March 16, 2016, John Pianka. July 9th, 2016, Katrina Van Voris. July 16, 2016, Robert Thomas Dean. August 25th, 2016, Jeffrey Wonka. October 13th, 2016, John McCandles. November 3rd, 2016, J.D. Wadklast. December 31st, 2017, Sharon Miller. January 7th, 2018, Robert Rogers. April 25th, 2018, John Jankowski. August 25th, 2018, Raymond Stroik. January 24th, 2019, Robert Barndollar. March 21st, 2019, Bill Moronic. April 3rd, 2019, Cliff Peltier. September 14th, 2019, Bob Stroik. January 27th, 2020, Jackie Osowski. August 5th, 2020, Marianne Krems. November 17th, 2020, Zachary Hank Reynolds. February 22nd, 2021, Mary Jane Mishka. May 12th, 2021, Jamie Harkness. December 7th, 2021, Jeffrey DeGroot. March 1st, 2022, Joanne Chase. August 8th, 2022, Frankie Ledger. October 24th, 2022, Dwayne Robert Gates. August 6th, 2023, Carla Wilkinson. January 14th, 2023, Gerald Disher. June 14th, 2023, Anthony Cecil.
John Eaton, who is a member of the Franciscan community, as I am, and Brother Bill Stout. John Eaton is with our new organization, or reorganizing of our 6 provinces across the country. He's one of the counselors for this area. And so I'm going to ask Brother John, as he refers to say a few words about who we are in this new entity and why we are still here in Stevens Point.
Just to be clear, I'm not the same John that Father Plaster was talking about earlier. I grew up in Ashland. I'm from Wisconsin originally, but I've worked in Chicago and Louisiana, Arkansas, Nashville, Tennessee, the inner city of Chicago. I've been around quite a few places, and am now serving as one of the council members for the new province of Our Lady of Guadalupe. We're based in Atlanta. It's where our provincial office is, but I am living in Franklin, Wisconsin, just west of Milwaukee. In the Gospel of Luke, you may recall, there's a story towards the end of the Gospel about the first Easter, where the disciples are confused, they're disoriented, they're disheartened, and a couple of the disciples say, okay, we can't take it anymore. And so they head off home to a village called Emmaus. And as you will recall, there's a as they are walking along, a stranger comes. Of course, we who know the gospel know that it's not the stranger, but Jesus. But they don't recognize him for whatever reason. And the first thing he says to them is, "What are you talking about?" And they are a little taken back. So how can you not know what's going on in Jerusalem these days? He said, "Well, tell me about it." And so they talk about the hopes that they had for Jesus, the disappointment they experience now. And then Jesus reframes what they're experiencing and puts it in the context of the larger story of salvation. When I looked at the website for Franciscans Downtown, one of the things it says is, we weave community by sharing stories. And I thought, well, I'm kind of a novice weaver. I have a loom in my office, and when I can, I weave. So it caught my eye. But it's the sharing of stories that is so important, that this is what builds us up. It's through the telling of stories that we can explore our feelings. Sometimes we relive our feelings. That can be good or bad. But it also helps us understand a little bit more about what's going on. And when we hear stories, we begin to empathize with the characters, whether it's somebody we know or somebody we read about in a book. We begin to experience what they experience. We empathize with them. What Jesus did, and I think what's important for all of us to do, and I think it's especially important for those of us who are called to be preachers, is to listen to people's stories and then to try to put them in the context of the larger story, God's story, the story of salvation. How does God's story impact your life? Where do the stories intersect? And where can God's story help you understand your story? The sharing of stories that takes place here, I've been wanting to visit here for a long time, but usually when I was coming up, heading up to Ashland, I would stop in Plover, and then I would spend the night in Plover, so I was always through here too early to stop in. So this is a real opportunity for me, but I think to have a place where people can share stories is so valuable. And I think Father Placid's vision of this place, I think the many people that were named, living and deceased, to help make this place a place where community can be woven together through the sharing of stories. Part of our Franciscan heritage, I think, is what we call a ministry of presence. Yes, people work in hospitals, they work in parishes, they work in schools, they do all these other things. But one of the important parts of our ministry as Franciscans, whether it's Franciscan friars or sisters, is to simply be present, to be willing to listen, and to be willing to help people understand their story in the context of the larger story. So I thank Father Placid for inviting me to be here to represent the province of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I thank you for your presence here and for the stories you share. Thank you.
Thank you, Father John, Brother John. John Eaton and I, and Mary Jo, go back from a long ways back in Ashland, where I was raised our family, and so we know each other long time. So it's really nice to see you again, and I appreciate the comments that you made. It reminds me of when I first started volunteering here, and Father Placid was describing Franciscan Downtown to me, and it stuck to me, his image. And what he said was, this place is a waiting room, because we're always waiting for something, and we're always waiting for, whatever it is, a job, a retirement, whatever it is, we're always waiting. And those are the times when we share those stories. Those are the times when we learn how we are in God's story, how we are affected in that story. And so I always view this place with a special heart, with that description of this is a waiting room. And I really appreciate the support that we all have from this community. I appreciate the support that we have from the Franciscans and the support of all the volunteers. And I really enjoy coming here on my Mondays and hearing stories from people. So this is a really special place in my heart because it just means a lot to me because I get a lot out of what we do. Father Placid mentioned just a moment ago that he had some closing remarks. Is that right? And then we'll have a prayer at the end.
First of all, John, thank you. And my closing remarks were not going to include this, but I would not be able to sleep tonight if I did not say that when he said sharing of stories, which is on the wonderful billboard that we have in the parades. It was right about this time when we're getting ready for the 4th of July parade that Leo Jacoby was, I think, right at Staples. And he said they have a discount on making big posters. And what should we put on that? And he had all kinds of ideas. But the line that is on there, I fully agreed with it. But it originally comes from Leo Jacoby, probably with the help of Janet. But it says simply, the sharing with one another the stories of our lives. So it's been there, and thanks very much, John, for putting that in such a great context. My final comments have to do with just to, if you have the time to go downstairs, there are no tuxedos down there like there used to be, but there's a lot of Franciscan artwork and things that we're putting together, and there's a lot of posters, inspirational posters that we used early on, all done by Sister Angeline in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. You're welcome to take those posters. There's quotes on there from David White and for other people, but you can take them. You don't have to worry about paying for them. They're all displayed downstairs if you got time. And then there's a little room just by the posters. It's called the San Damiano Reflection Room. The historical note is that when Francis of Assisi, after he said, no, I'm not going to do what my dad did and sell clothing to make money, I'm going to be poor, but he didn't know how to do that. He wandered into a little church, a broken down church, about 1209, and he looked at a cross, and the cross said something to him. It basically said, Francis, would you repair my church? At first he thought, oh, this church is falling apart. Let's go get some bricks. And his friend Bernardo came to help him. And Bernardo, who was a very intelligent person, said, Francis, are you so sure you understood what Jesus wanted you to do? He didn't want you to put bricks together. He wanted you to go out into the piazzas and tell people the same thing that John was saying. When this place was being organized, I was walking someplace on the streets of Stevens Point, trying to figure what's the next thing to do with the help of Leo Jacoby and Janet, as well as with Randy and my brother Bob and Marlene. And all of a sudden, somewhere out of nowhere, there weren't many people around, but a song came to me. And it simply was, if you want to live life free, take your time, go slowly, do few things, but do them well. Simple joys are holy. Day by day, you'll grow too. You'll know heaven's glory. If you want to live life free, Take your time, go slowly. Do a few things, but do them well. Simple